Now, if we look at the um, Azores Islands, there is a known volcano on these islands, and there is also a giant crack in the earth cutting straight through the Azores Islands. Now, this crack is the place where two tectonic plates meet together, and it would have only taken a earthquake right at this point to sink the island completely. Um, Obviously, not totally completely. There are still the Azores, which would have just been the high mountains of the Atlantis continent. Um, at the same time, the whole rest of the world would have been flooded. Now, why would this have happened? Is there geological evidence of this? Turns out there is. The Ice Age, as I was saying before, the Ice Age was coming to an end, and you had all of these ice sheets across the earth that would have been melting. Now, at a certain point in time, it would have caused minor flooding, where you would have had things like the Garden of Eden, where you have multiple rivers sprouting up everywhere. You'd have waterways just going nuts across the land, and it would have created a lush wilderness that people would have found. They would have found the landscape to be uh, abundant and full of life. Um, so, but at a certain point in time, as the heat melts the ice, you would have a major flood. It was building up to something that was going to wipe away all of humanity. And this ice age came to an end, and at the end of which, around 12,000 years ago, the entire world had a worldwide flood. This does not mean that every mountain and every piece of land was underwater. Um, Hugh Ross also has mentioned that the term, it says in the Bible that the mountains were covered with water, but Hugh Ross has stated that the Hebrew term is actually referring to hills being covered. Most the time, people in this time period, in 15,000 years to 12,000 years, we're not living on the tops of mountains. These days that we live in now, people are climbing Everest just for the fun of it, and climbing every mountain and getting on top of every single thing. These are not places that are habitable for life to live, though. This is not a place you want to live at. Of course, during the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, in Tibet and various other places, Peru, people had found their way to the high places of the world. But these are most likely people who, had seen the flood and tried to get away, and found themselves clinging to these high places. Now, the Atlanteans, these Cro-Magnon people, would have been wiped out when this happened, along with all the Neanderthals and all the people who were living in this area at the time. When the flood happened, Noah and his family would have been the last Neanderthals left alive, and these people would have repopulated the Middle East with what was left of the Neanderthal genetic code, and these people would have mixed with other people along the way. By the time we get to Abraham, how many people, how many generations is it from Noah? They would have had to have mixed with modern man. And this is a major concept to Judaism and Christianity, is that these people were different from everybody else, and they had their own religion. And this is a major point concerning Atlantis. When we look at the pagan cultures across the world, we see a consistency, 7 gods, and all of the uh, minor gods coming from them, and a deep root in astrology, and a deep, uh, you know, consistency across the map from Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Hindu mythology. All of these things match up very nicely with each other. In contrast, we have the Bible, which is the first monotheistic faith ever to see the world. It's the first time anyone ever said that there was one God, okay? And it comes from a completely different kind of people who say that God had chose them above everybody else, and these would have been the Neanderthals. Okay, now, as we go through the Bible, you hear many times that the Hebrews were the God's chosen people, and it suggests that their genetic code was different from everyone else's, and that their culture, their religion, their concepts of, the afterlife would have been different from everybody else who lived at the time. And, the Atlantean people had a lot of pride, and they had a lot of technology, and they had overused it and overindulged in their desires, and they had oppressed many people across the land, and the flood had wiped them out mostly. The remnants of which became people like the Egyptians, people like the Sumerians, and various people of this nature. And, again, the Atlanteans, when the flood hit, they would have only had a very small population of people who would have survived this thing, and those people would have become the high priests and people who were in charge of the new populations that were coming in. Now it would have been the anatomically modern humans. We're talking about the out of Africa model in evolution, where you have about 15,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans start leaving Africa. And what world do they come into? They come into the world of the Neanderthals and the Cro-Magnons, and they would have become the subjects of the Cro-Magnon people. And and that this is where all of human history takes off from. So a picture of humanity is, it's fractured between different concepts. It's fractured between evolution, it's fractured between the Bible, and it's fractured between mythologies across all cultures. And if we can just see that these are actually just pieces of the puzzle, in other words, everybody's more or less right about what they believe in. It's just taken from a different perspective, and if we can combine these concepts together, we'll find that there is a consistency across them all. Whether you believe in evolution, whether you believe in God, or some other religion, these are all holding pieces of what is known to the world. And because of this, people want to say, oh, my book is the only one, my concepts are the only ones that count. And I would just encourage everybody to look a little bit deeper and study things that you don't necessarily believe in, because we can find consistency in all of these concepts very well. There's nothing that contradicts itself across these things. Most of the people who believe in the Bible are genuinely looking for truth. And most of the people who follow science and follow evolution, follow astronomy, follow all these things, they are also looking for truth. They are finding truth in what they look for. And all these other cultures, all these other places are looking for a kind of truth. And what is lacking in these things is that they all have gaps. They all have things that where it stops making sense. Okay, and that is where we get things like these early Earth creationists, these flat earthers, people who, are not embracing science. They're only embracing one concept, and they're really taking things out of context, and putting damage to the Bible and putting damage to Christianity as a whole, because they are not looking at the big picture. If we look at everything and accept that all these sources are inherently looking for truth at a core level, they want to find truth, and it's only by combining these together and looking across all of them that we're going to find a truth. Now, we have a long way to go with this, and things are, changing all the time, and people are becoming more aware of these things. More and more people are finding that what they have is not true enough. We need something that's a more complete picture of our history. And that is what the Church of Reason is all about. We are trying to find the answers wherever they may be, whether it's in the Bible or in science or, in other religions, in other parts of the world. The world is very big, and there is plenty of room to fit these things together and see what each other are talking about. The main thing we need to know is that the terms that we use are going to be different from the terms that other people use. Okay? When we're talking about evolution, they don't use the same terms that we do in Christianity. And because of this, there is a major window for misinterpretations. If you found this video to be informative, go ahead and hit the like, share, and subscribe icons. We're going to be doing a follow-up video to this one relatively soon, where we cover some of the things that didn't make it into this episode, and also answering some of the questions that come up in the comment section. So don't forget to post your comments. And we're going to be doing the next episode in the series, which is going to cover another controversial subject, which is putting the Bible in the U.S. school system. So until then, God be with you.